Okay, I think I actually got it going this time. Let's see if that's correct or not. Since it's been a while since I've done one of these, I totally... There we go. I'm trying to get everything in frame. Try. And we will see, with this being as impromptu as it actually is, how many peeps actually roll in for this. But it is King birthday weekend. His birthday being today, September 21st, which is supremely exciting for someone like me who is the constant reader, tower junkie, all that fun stuff. Okay, I'm muting this tab so I can share the linky. Where are we? Jumping onto the Hail the Stephen King Facebook group, which I sadly do not get to quite as often as I would like since going back to school full time, but we will see if this posts proper. Oops. Joys of modern technology when you're trying to get yourself back on the proverbial horse. Let's see if that pastes right. No, did not seem to do it. Yeesh. Well, man, do I have to do it on my separate device? Oh, there it is. There we go. Okay, put into this. Hit the live. Now I can share it properly. Thanks for bearing with for those who are actually here, since this was a last-minute sort of affair. Okay, come on. I hope everybody's having a most fantabulous start to this new season. I think the first day of fall is today. It's either today or tomorrow, as it always is. So my birthday was yesterday, Sai King's birthday being today, and all that jazz. There we go. There it is. There you go, guy. Okay, live order, Ka-Tet. Okay. Sweet. Well, I am just going to get it rock-a-lockin' because I unfortunately do have a lot of other things that I need to do this evening as well, so I'm going to get a little bits of my coffee. And since I bet a lot of people are going to be seeing this after the fact, that's cool. I got my rocking my gunslingy. Yeah. All right. A little bit more room. Okay. Oh, boy, you can see shoes back there. Delightful. All right. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I'm known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver for the first time in a long time on Hail to Stephen King. That is Reezy, everybody. And yes, so very thankful to have you here for some palaver, for some discussion all about Sai King, because today is his 77th birthday. That's right, his 77th turn of the wheel, so to speak, starting today. He was born September 21st, 1947. So, yeah, man, still being prolific, still doing all kinds of stuff, just wrapping up this another year of progress and releasing things and other things being either adapted or rumored to be adapted. I mean, it's not quite the King of Haunts, obviously, anymore. All of that stuff has petered down, and I guess the taking a step back for me to not do this program on the regular, only sporadically, because I went back to the university, Arizona State, and I'm just about to finish with a film and media studies degree. I'm on my last couple of classes for graduation in the spring, and so that was essentially studying film, the history of it, television, and not just that, but also just insights about everything from video games to just trends within digital marketing for entertainment. I mean, I had a nice multifaceted sort of approach to everything like that. But mostly genre has always been my favorite thing from all those years with the horror show. Still with the horror show, when I can actually make my way out there and everything. And so I just happened to have this slot available Saturday evenings. I normally get together and rehearse with my band, but our singer is out of town, so she's out doing this Wasteland thing, which is like a Mad Max convention weekend of craziness. It's like Mad Max meets Coachella kind of thing. And so she's busy with that, and I had this free Saturday, and so I'm like, you know what? Let's at least talk King on his birthday, show some reverence for the man, for the my favorite writer and the guy who I so affectionately refer to as El Rey. And so when I first started doing this show, the very first episode was actually 8 years ago to the day, because that was when I did a happy 69th birthday, 69 dudes, to Stephen King. And it was essentially me talking about just my affinity for the author, my long history with him, favorite books, as I've gone on record countless times, things like the Unholy Trinity is untouched, in my opinion, to this day, which is still Pet Sematary, The Sand, and It. However, we have things like Salem's Lot, which we'll be getting to some news about that here in a little bit. We have the Tower Saga, all 8 books of it, and plus additional supplemental material like Little Sisters of Eluria, and, tie-ins like Everything's Eventual. There's so many different things that tie in with the Tower. My personal favorite of those being probably Wizard and Glass, but it's so very close with the Wasteland. Like 3 and 4, that is like the sweet spot, and probably the first half to 2/3 of Wolves of the Kala. That's my sweet spot for the Tower. And so, yeah, those are my absolute favorites of King's, and I talked about favorite adaptations as well. And I went on to do 333 episodes of Hail to Stephen King for the horror show before Cecil went on the stretch run, I guess you could say, with Dylan's New Nightmare, which was our Wes Craven's New Nightmare fan film sequel that Cecil wrote and directed. Myself and my band contributed some music to it. And so that was a lot of fun. And now yet we are in the recalibration mode. Cecil has written the sequel script to that. He has a couple other ideas that are floating around, a couple other scripts that are being shown. So he's trying to figure out his next move. I'm almost done with school. So yeah, we'll see how the next 6 to 9 months or so of not just this program, Hail to Stephen King, but both here on Enfuegotainment and the horror show, how all of the developments transpire there. But yeah, man, 8 years ago to the day that I put out my first Hail to Stephen King episode, and I wasn't even calling it Hail back then. I still hadn't come up with an idea. That would come a little bit later when I launched the show proper in early 2017. And yet, King was all the rage for about 3 to 4, maybe 5 years. But even at the tail end of 2019, when Chapter 2 was coming out, you could tell that, things were simmering down just a wee bit. And I have to actually jump up here to an email that I sent myself because of the fact that I wanted to double check on a list that I had been slowly working on for ages and ages and ages. And it was being constantly updated throughout the course of the years doing Hail to Stephen King on the horror show. And yet the list has been updated, or at least certain projects going into limbo, certain things being announced, and then nothing ever becoming of them. So in a year where King only released one book, and that one book was none other than, let me just jump over and grab it, You Like It Darker. This was extremely popular. A lot of people, myself included, my buddy Mike Kearns from Mike's Book Reviews, excellent partner along the path of the beam, good buddy of mine. Both of us agreed when we did our video on his channel discussing this, that this was most definitely a return to form, and it was pretty rad status to see King doing what I almost felt like was kind of a greatest hits sort of thing for his 2024 release. And so this came out in May, and I've still been debating if I want to do before the year is over, when I have time between maybe fall sessions A and B, which is coming up in about 2 weeks, or maybe over the winter break before the year is over, maybe ranking the stories in this, because that was an idea I floated with Mike, and we just knew we weren't going to have time for it in that particular live stream that him and I did. So I don't know, that's a possibility. And yet there were some bangers in here, guys. A lot of this I had actually read previously, because many of these were actually released in, other publications, New York Times, or I think Esquire had a few of them. But there were some legitimate bangers, man. The Two Bastards was a great story. It was almost like making amends, in my opinion, for something like Dreamcatcher. King wanting to dip back into science fiction and feeling like, it was time to do it. And he had a solid story of both camaraderie and also a little bit of smack talk, I would say, about just the human race in general and where we may be headed. The Dreamers I thought was really cool. If I'm trying to remember correctly, if that was the one that had kind of had a vibe that was almost no, I don't think it was the Dreamers. Now that I think about it, boy, I'm trying to. What else do we have here? Turbulence Expert, yeah, I'd read that before. Stuff like Red Screen, I wasn't too impressed with. Fifth Step, I wasn't too impressed with. Willie the Weirdo was another one that I enjoyed, and yet it had echoes of the story N, where somebody is getting obsessed with numbers, and you had the combative, not private investigator, the cop that was after our main dude Willie. But yeah, Lori I thought was great. That was the one with the crocodile and the pet dog. I thought that was really good. I think the Dreamers is the one that I'm thinking of, which had echoes of Revival, very Lovecraftian sort of vibe to it. Really dug that one. Rattlesnakes was a little bit of a letdown, with the hype surrounding it being a unofficial sequel to Cujo, because it was going to be carrying along with the husband from that story and everything, whose name is eluding me at this particular moment. But, he moves down to Florida. He's all grown up. He talks about how him and the wife, after, the death of their son in the original Cujo novel, actually ended up getting back together years later and stuff. And so it was an interesting continuation from some aspects. And I loved all the Doohickey references, being in Florida, obviously. But that one with the pram and everything, and his son Joe had written a story that was published within the year before or 6 months before, called The Pram, I thought was a lot better. I don't know. Rattlesnakes was just a little bit of a letdown. The Answer Man was excellent, man. It had some vibes of the only story that's not been adapted from Full Dark No Stars. I'm trying to remember the name of it, man, offhand. A matter of fact, in any event, about kind of a man who barters, and then the whole almost like monkey's paw sort of vibe of, hey, you wish for it, and who the hell knows, it may not actually be a good thing for you. It's going to be turned around on you. But yeah, The Answer Man, which was the final story in this, and the oldest story in it actually as well. King had actually reworked it from some notes that I believe his nephew, who was like his tech assistant, had actually found for him. And so, this book, while it wasn't perfect, it had some real bangers. Once again, like a greatest hits of sorts. It came out in May. I still hope to do some sort of countdown, spoilers, something video before the end of the year when I have a little bit more time, because once again, full-time student at ASU, it has been a lot. So that was all that we actually got on the literary side, because, some years King will put out two things, two books, like one in, I don't know, earlier in the year, like a March or an April, and then he'll have another one in September, November or whatever. And so it was not one of those years where we were blessed double, like at the height of the King-assance a few years ago. But so, yeah, that was cool. And everything from there is really, I know next year we have another Holly book coming, or he's saying within the next year or so. And okay, we had our Holly novel proper, with her and the whole old academic couple with an affinity for something in particular because it helps them regain some strength. I thought that story was actually a lot better than many people gave it credit for, but I am of the camp where, as much as I enjoy Holly as a character, and boy as hell, we sure know King absolutely loves this character. Gotta say, I was just a little less about hearing that we're going to have another Holly story. And in this particular one, King has been floating the idea, unless he's trolling us about another Holly story, that this is going to be her being part of like a private security troop or something. He was making a joke about Lady Gaga when she lost her dog, and how, just private investigators helping with this. So it sounds silly. It sounds like King just can't get Holly out of his system. And hey, if that's the case, I mean, whatever. But, with some of the stuff that he's been teasing lately on his social media, I would just really prefer it if we got something different besides Holly. That was what made You Like It Darker. Even though I didn't adore every single story, I still was just so stoked on it because of the fact that it was something different, even if it was kind of riffs on things of his that we had seen and read before. It still was something different enough. It pivoted enough, and it wasn't just returning to, I mean, Holly has been used. She's second, I believe, only to, Roland Deschain and, I think some of the lesser members of, well, not lesser members of the Ka-Tet, but other members of the new Ka-Tet, which was Eddie and, Susanna and Oi, and Jake. And so in any event, I do see that there are a couple people. So we got a howdy from Robert. He's just saying, what's up? Yeah, Robert, we're supposed to be doing band practice, but our singer was unavailable. So that's why I had this little window open. I see Jack. He says, cheers. I see Jose Storms. Long days, Jaime. And may yours be twice as long and twice as great, Jose. Jose's one of those dudes who has been following the Tower stuff and just the King stuff, I believe both on the Facebook group and on other socials for a long time. So what's up, man? I wasn't really expecting a ton of people. This was just me kind of trying to dip my toe back in when I saw a just little window of opportunity open up, and especially with it being King's birthday and all, it seemed incredibly befitting. And so, yeah, the big stuff on the horizon right now for King seems to be another ramp up to adaptations. And the only adaptations that I'm actually going to talk about here as we're kind of looking ahead to, the next year or so in King things are things that we know for sure are transpiring, things that we have a release date for, things that just premiered at the TIFF Awards, things that we know have a set date on HBO Max. I mean, these are the things that we can pretty much say relatively that they are about as set in stone as they can be. But then again, look what happened with Salem's Lot. That flick has been done for years at this point. A lot of people, myself included, were wondering if it was even actually going to be released. And so who the hell knows, man? I'm hopeful that it's not going to be a big disappointment, because that's going to be the first thing that we're going to talk about right now, guys. Salem's Lot. So starring Lewis Pullman, son of Bill Pullman, none other than While You Were Sleeping, Serpent in the Rainbow. Yeah, I know. I really love both of those movies. And he's probably, in the horror circles at least, pretty well known for the Voodoo Wes Craven movie. But I think the mainstream audience, the zeitgeist of sorts, he was the president in Independence Day, and so that was his, it's probably his big cultural touchstone. But his son, Lewis Pullman, man, he's been pretty solid in just about everything that I've seen him in. He was in this film just a month or two ago that I checked out, which had Elizabeth Banks, and it was about cosmetology and people's careers getting effed up. It was like a comedic thriller. He was in it as this kind of interestingly fluid sexually character, he was funny, but also a little bit conniving without spoiling too much stuff. I don't know. It was a great performance in that, and he's all beefcaked up and stuff. First thing I think I ever saw him in, though, was Bad Times at the El Royale. He was the front desk clerk in that flick, which was rad status. I mean, one of the best Tarantinos to ever Tarantino that wasn't Tarantino. Friggin' love that movie. Drew Goddard, I believe, was behind the screenplay and stuff for it. So, yeah, solid dude. Also in the Top Gun sequel. So that's all cool as well. But, yeah, man, Salem's Lot has been done a couple times previously. And this is where, when it comes to adaptations, I just get so frustrated all the time, because I'm like, we still don't have Doomickey. We still don't have Revival. We still don't have, they tease every now and then they're going to try to do something like The Regulators, or they're going to try to do something from a Buick 8 or whatever. I'll get to some of those aborted adaptations here in a moment, but they just keep wanting to remake properties that are already in, the consciousness of, pop culture, I guess. And so in 1979, yeah, Tobe Hooper's Exceptional One, which was a miniseries made for television, but yet still brought, in my estimation, some significant menace. I mean, the design for Barlow, I thought was just fantastic. So I don't know, man. I thought that this one was pretty timeless and pretty rad status. And then, of course, you had the goofiness that was Larry Cohen's Return to Salem's Lot. And Return to Salem's Lot, Initially, I think I watched it when I was a kid because I heard there was like boobies in it or something, and I rented it from the VHS store, and I was like, excuse me, I was like, okay, there's not as much vampire cool action as I wanted. It wasn't like super titillating or whatever for, a 12-year-old Fuego, and yet it's grown on me over time because of the fact that I love the partnership of Larry Cohen and Michael Moriarty, most notably from The Stuff, which is my favorite collaboration between the two of them, but also Cue the Winged Serpent. I believe they did that one together as well. And so the camp and just the weirdness, the whole other turn of the wheel, different level of the tower that this actually is, I've grown to actually appreciate it. Some of the storytelling I don't think is that bad, and it can kind of live in the same epilogue sort of territory in some ways as One for the Road, which was which was the epilogue that King put in Night Shift. And then keep in mind, we also, I don't have the physical copy of it because I don't even think it was properly released in region A, I think is what they call North America and stuff. I could probably get a regionless copy of like a DVD or a Blu-ray, but Chapelway, which was loosely adapting the Jerusalem's Lot story, had a great performance by Emily Tampshire, I want to say her name is, but primarily Adrian Brody. He's terrific. That was a show that was seemingly greenlit for a second season on was it MGM Plus, I think, or whatever that network was called previously. But yeah, they ended up canceling it, unfortunately, just like so many other announced King adaptations have been canceled over the years. They make mention of them and then nothing going. So I see that there's a few people in the chat and like watching. I obviously gave a what's up to any of them, but if you have anything to chime in about from the last year of King releases, or maybe something cool that you discovered from Sai King, read for the first time, watched for the first time, that's adjacent to him, I'd love to hear about it. But then we had this baby in 2004, I believe, and this was a modernized version of Salem's Lot, as in it was taking place in the present day, but yet keep in mind the original Salem's Lot was taking place in its present day of the late 70s, when it first came out. So inconsequential. This one starred actually some heavy hitters. You had Rob Lowe, you had Donald Sutherland, you had James Cromwell, I want to say, as Father Callahan. Am I correct? Yes. This was most definitely a different level of tower, turn of the wheel, so to speak, because they change up some character motivations. They expand on some of the townspeople in certain fashions. It was broadcast on TNT originally. You've also got Rutger Hauer, I think, playing Barlow, and yet a controversial one scene sort of bit where he didn't even have any of his lines remembered, and they had to film him in that. Once again, I didn't mention it here, but there are reviews on the horror show of every single Stephen King, not just original adaptation for TV and for film and whatnot, but all of the stuff that was like the unofficial sequels, Pet Sematary 2, Return to Salem's Lot, things of that nature, where it was that sometimes they come back again and sometimes they come back for more. These things that were continuing on the story weren't exactly sanctioned by King, but I guarantee he was collecting a paycheck of some sort for having his name, his story association, because they would always say based on characters created by Stephen King. And so, yeah, guys, that's the thing in that regard. But upon rewatches, I've grown to appreciate some of this from a production standpoint. It's not as god-awful as I remembered upon revisiting it. It's not quite films that forgot the face of their father's status or anything of that nature, but it's definitely not very good. And so that's what brings us to this new version of Salem's Lot. So I was thinking originally that it was going to be, taking place in our present day, and yet apparently they've made a period piece with this Gary Dauberman film. And some of my buddies, like Jason Smith at Sinister Cinema, seem really excited about this. The book is excellent, man. One of King's best. I prefer it to The Shining and Carrie, which it's those two are sandwiched around, and I think in some ways get a little bit more attention as far as their adaptations go because they were so iconic. De Palma's Carrie and Kubrick's Shining and whatnot. But yeah, man, I really am not the biggest fan of Gary Dauberman. He's okay. He's a protege of James Wan. He's still rumored to be directing a film version of the Tommyknockers after this. But once again, that's also in that realm of big. They announce something is happening, and then years go by and we don't hear anything about it. I'm going to do a full rundown before this video is over of all those different things. But yeah, October 3rd, which I believe is a couple Thursdays from now, it's not going to theaters like King was hoping, like King was championing on his social media. Apparently it's going to cinemas in the UK and over, and I think Ireland, and I guess it's all the United Kingdom over there, right? The UK, Britain and Wales, and I know Ireland. I don't think North Ireland. I don't know. I'm not going to say I have any sort of, proper cognizance or knowledge of all the stuff as far as geography and things in that particular area of the world. But yeah, I mean, decent enough cast, competent enough director. It's really the fact that I think Dauberman's done stuff like The Nun, and I didn't love. He's an okay director in my estimation. He's not as good of a writer. Okay, because I believe he was the one who got the final writing credit for, I know, chapter 2 of it, and I believe he was the one who did some reworkings of the Fukuhara script. I want to say the guy who was originally the true crime, was it True Crime? God damn it, man. True Detective. That's it. Yeah, the dude behind True Detective who did the first draft of the new It that ended up being directed by Andy Muccinetti. So October 3rd, we are finally getting to see it, at least here in the States, on Max. And I don't know, I'm trying to just hope for the best, plan for the worst, going with an open mind, and just hey, it's an R-rated version of it. So the first time we have had an actual R-rated, theatrical originally intended, but an R-rated Salem slot, because both the TNT miniseries and the miniseries from '79 that I believe was on CBS, I think that's where they broadcast it. But yeah, man, that is the lowdown for that first thing. So I see a familiar face in the chat. Rob, Rubber Soul, good to see you in here, man. He says, happy birthday, homie. I just finished Fairy Tale. I actually really enjoyed going searching for a third, going around for a third journey to the tower. Yeah, that's what I am debating over the winter break, is another journey to the tower, especially with some stuff we'll get to here in a little bit with regards to King. Okay. Jose jumps in and says the My Pretty Pony limited editions. Yeah, I've seen them, Jose, and there's still a handful of limited editions that I'm trying to track down. It's just that the money has been not in as plentiful supply. I know there is a deluxe edition of the Tommy Knockers from a number of years ago I've been trying to track down. There is also a version of Skeleton Crew. I'm trying to remember if those are both from Subterranean or if they're from PS Publishing. But so there's those. There's a version of Christine that I've been trying to get for a while. There is a deluxe version of Cujo. Like, for the longest time, I was like, okay, I'll just do the Cemetery Dance King things, cut it off at that. And yet, as I started seeing the amazing work that so many of these other companies were doing, and I have my pre-orders for The Stand and for Pet Sematary, which round out the Scribner releases from King, that, or excuse me, not the Scribner, the Doubleday releases from Stephen King. So the Doubleday releases from Stephen King will be finished by Cemetery Dance when they finally put out The Stand and Pet Sematary, because I have both of those on pre-order. Who the hell knows with Cemetery Dance? As much as I love them, I pre-order stuff when it's announced, and they just come out when they come out, sort of thing. So yeah, that's the lowdown there. But so yeah, October 3rd, everybody, look forward to it. I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic because I like Lewis Pullman. I think he's an interesting choice for Ben Mears. The rest of the cast, I like the costuming. I dig the kind of creepy use of a classic rock song in the trailer. I'm always up for that. But yeah, guys, I mean, it's about all that I got to say with regards to this film that is finally, after years of sitting around and fear of it being a tax write-off for Warner, like they did with Batgirl, like they did with that Wile E. Coyote Acme movie. Thank goodness. I think King hitting the socials probably helped to a degree, but who knows, man? So, oh man, I see Lou is on. Evening all. So one of my other partners along the path of the beam, everybody who was so a few years ago for the Fangoria FearCon, we did a panel all about adaptations of Stephen King, favorite books, favorite adaptations and stuff. Lou was on there. Oh goodness, obviously Mike Kearns from Mike's Book Reviews. Blue Gillen from Cemetery Dance. I don't know if he's still working with them. I believe he is. And then my homegirl, Sarah Wegstaff, who is up in the chilly Northwest here in the United States. So it was nice to get a female perspective from a tower junkie as well. So that was very cool. But yeah, so Salem's on October 3rd. You're going to be able to stream it on your Max service. But if you're in the UK, you can actually see it in theaters, which I'm a little bit envious of. So next up, I have to say, the next big release that we for sure know is coming. Okay, we've got Tatiana. Her last name eludes me, but she was She-Hulk in that Marvel She-Hulk series, and I think she is an actress with nuance and charm. She can hit dramatic. She can be funny. It makes me wonder how serious this film is going to be, though, because we are getting an adaptation of The Monkey. Yeah, you see it right there on the cover of our Skeleton Crew hardcover here. So that story was actually included in this. and it was never one that stood out to me like supremely from that collection. It was one of those, okay, it's all right. You've got two brothers, and having two brothers myself. Sorry, the dust from my books. I was like trying to dust back there. My house is it's just, yes. Unfortunately, with all the books and DVDs and physical media and all this stuff, it gets very dusty very quickly in my home. But it's not one that I was like clamoring for an adaptation of. I like the dynamic. I like the fact that there are some interesting deaths in this, and it makes me wonder how much they're going to elaborate on. But you have Tatiana. You've also got Elijah Wood. I mean, there's a few noteworthy names and stuff. But the most noteworthy name of this adaptation of The Monkey that is hitting theaters February 21st next year. So just a few months away. I mean, early next year. That's not like, it's not the best time for horror films if they're coming out early in the year. You think of stuff this past year like Night Swim and Imaginary. It's where Blumhouse likes to dump a lot of their garbage. And I think this actually is a Blumhouse. But I'm hopeful because of the biggest name attached, which for me is Osgood Perkins. Now, I wasn't big into Long Legs like a lot of people were, but from a directorial standpoint, I thought it was rad status. I was a big fan. Word is this is a very much R-rated adaptation, so it's not going to try to like defang or declaw the source material. And finding at a if I'm remembering the story correctly, they find this little one of those monkeys with the symbols. And I used to, as a kid, get this story confused with Monkey Shines, which was the Ramiro movie, because one of the VHS covers, I could have sworn as a kid it had one of those monkeys. Maybe it didn't have the symbols, but it was one of those similar crazy looking monkeys with the teeth and the big eyes and everything that you would see sometimes with the symbols. But neither here nor there, guys. So yeah, the Monkey coming February 21st to theaters. But Osgood Perkins really made his name for me with The Blackcoat's Daughter. I enjoyed his Gretel and Hansel movie. I thought it was pretty damn good, man. Some people had some criticisms about it, and art is subjective, so that's perfectly fine. Whatever. No worries about that. But yeah, that is the next big King thing, which is for sure coming and actually has a release date. Okay. And so moving on to the next couple high-profile things that they have actually, in the case of the next film, started shooting. So in I believe it was July, one of the most long clamored for stories from the Bachman books. Now, all of these were released individually, being Rage, Roadwork, The Running Man, and the one which we are finally seeing adapted into a film. I've tried for years. Andre Radal, who did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and also The Autopsy of Jane Doe, he was the last person attached to it. And I was stoked about him adapting this story because I thought he would maybe elevate it beyond the PG-13 fare that I kind of understand would be ripe for the picking with a story like The Long Walk, because of the fact that you're dealing with these adolescent like teenage boys, so to speak. And so yeah, didn't end up happening with him. I know there's been various other names attached, but it is shooting right now. It started shooting in July. Trying to remember, Lou might actually know more than me about this. Was it Nova Scotia they were filming it? Yeah, I can't remember. Somewhere up in Canada. But yeah, it's happening. The Long Walk is finally happening, and with a curious director, I got to say. And one that, I guess in the grand scheme of things, does make sense. Now, I'm trying to double check on his name. I want to say it's Francis Lawrence. So director Francis Lawrence is behind, most notably, every one of those Hunger Games movies. I think I watched the first one. I don't know. It just felt like a lighter version of Battle Royale or even The Long Walk, so to speak. Death games with kids. Yeah. And so, yeah, he seems, with the fact that he's done, I think, 4 or 5 of those movies at this particular point, because there were like 2 or 3 more that had Jennifer Lawrence. And then I know he just directed the newest one, which was like a prequel or something, made a little bit of money, nowhere near as much as the ones with what is her name, Katniss, I want to say. Haven't read any of those books. I just don't really feel like I have much interest. But I know that they're relatively celebrated, and they made a lot of money at the theaters. And then he has a few other, edgier things that he has done over the course of his career. But yeah, I guess the Hunger Game, the guy who did, Halt and Catch Fire and all those that or Catching Fire. I don't know any of the subtitles of any of them, but I know that from what people have told me who are big fans of the books and of the film series, that those films improved when this other director came on, kind of like with the Harry Potter stuff, where when you had Alfonso Cuarón came on for the third one, and then when you had the guy who stepped in for the entries that went beyond there and directed all the way through the Beasts movies, those prequels and the American prequels and stuff, Fantastic Beasts. Just like with Harry Potter, that series of films improved over time from what people have told me. So I don't know. I would assume a capable director and somebody who probably fits the source material based on his experience with, I don't know, tweeners and death games. And I like the cast in this too. It's where I was thinking about just pre-recording this video so I could properly overlay things and whatnot. But I knew I wasn't going to have time to, even if I was going live, like amass enough photos. And I still haven't got myself properly attenuated with the software where I can, because I know Cecil uses Streamlabs or something like that. And I have other friends who use different software for actually being able to overlay things while you're going live. And I need to properly look into that. School has been relentless though. And so I just haven't gotten around to it, but I dig the cast for this. I mean, some of the members of our Boys in the Long Walk, you've got this kid who's in a film called Spontaneous that I thought was quite good. The dude from Licorice Pizza, I believe he is actually the son of the dearly departed, oh goodness, why is his name eluding me? In any event, got a solid cast. That's about all that I can say on it. And so the fact that it is actually filming makes it pretty clear that we're going to see The Long Walk, I would imagine, sometime in 2025, which is quite exciting. And then the other big thing is just, I guess, at this point, they say it's happening because now you have a star attached. And so it's also from the Bachman books, and that being a remake and allegedly more faithful take on The Running Man. So Edgar Wright, director of Ant-Man, Baby Driver, Shaun of the Dead. Excuse me, I said Ant-Man. He was originally trying to direct Ant-Man for years and years and years and didn't get around to doing it. So let's actually give Edgar Wright some proper respect. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim. The guy is incredibly talented, and he has such a vast array of different sort of films that he's done. But he loves The Running Man. He loves that Bachman book, and he's been wanting to do a faithful adaptation. That is not to say that I do not love this movie. It is delightful 80s schlock, the cast, the kills, the amplification of the game show aspect of it compared to, it's much more of the glitzy game show in comparison with almost a survival reality show in comparison with a game show, which is, the survival reality show is what I'm hoping. Go full R-rated. Don't go, this had a nice 80s camp factor to it. And that's not to say that you couldn't have some humor in an Edgar Wright Running Man movie. I would imagine we will, at least to bring some levity, so to speak. But I don't know. Will they go with the dark ending? That's what I really wonder. Somehow I doubt it, with the fact that none other than Glenn Powell, who has had himself quite a year. I know that he did the girl from Euphoria. He was in the Immaculate movie. Yeah, Endowed. Sweeney, I want to say her name is. They had some romantic comedy that made a lot of money. And then he was in Top Gun Maverick. He's kind of the antagonist of sorts, within the ranks, going against Miles Teller's character. And then he also was in Twisters, which didn't make a lot of money overseas, but excuse me, made a ton of money here in the States. And so Glenn Powell has finally ascended to being, I wouldn't say an A-lister, but he's definitely a big-time star on the rise. And attaching a name like his to a Running Man remake, I think gives it some clout. And even though I'm not a huge fan of his, he had some charm to him in the Twisters movie. And I don't know. My trust lies, I will say, in Edgar Wright directing this, and I believe also working on the script as well. I don't know if he has a collaborator in it, but the year is 2019. How ironic is that they set this in 2019? It's just been a while since I've watched this one. I did a whole video about this on Hail to Stephen King many years ago, about this particular film and stuff. But I think Ben Richards is just such an interesting antagonist, and just the plight of him, much more so than in the film, is like an uphill battle, so to speak. And that's why I really dig the source material of The Running Man. Now, I still have a soft spot for the 80s movie, and I have a lot of love for it. But yeah, and the way that King does it as a countdown too, I really dig that. I mean, if you have never read the book The Running Man, it is available in paperback just by itself, because I know the Bachman books have been out of print for quite some time at this particular point. So yeah, that is the other one as far as films go that we know is actually happening. Because, man, as I'm looking at my list here, and sorry, when I'm on the laptop, I have to kind of lean in a little bit, because back when I was doing Hail to Stephen King proper, over those years from 2017 to 2023, literally, most notably between, I would say, about 19 or 20 and then about 22, it was almost like every week or so we had a new Stephen King property that was being announced that they were adapting. I mean, they had a television series for N that they were working on at one particular point. There was supposed to be a series from the team behind the Colorado Kid television series, which was called Haven, if I remember correctly, that I still would like to do some Hail coverage for at another point. To the Dumb Cujo remake they were trying to do at one particular point. I mean, James Franco was trying to do Drunken Fireworks. You had Jack Bender trying to do Elevation. You had something for the Gingerbread Man was announced. You had the producers of It, which would be the Mochetti siblings. They were talking about how they were going to do finally The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, which Ramiro was trying to do at one particular point. Johannes Roberts was supposed to be directing Hearts in Atlantis, a story about just that particular novella from the collection about the freshmen that get addicted to playing hearts and they're all flunking out. We had a Jaunt television series that was announced. We had a Joyland series that was going to be on Freeform. We had I'm listing the less prominent ones here initially. You had Little Green God of Agony was going to be a film, and it was from one of the former Walking Dead showrunners, and Lionsgate was going to be producing it. The 1922 producer was going to be doing Mile 81, which is it's in contention with Buick 8 for most underrated of King's, possessed vehicle or machine sort of stuff. I mean, what else do we have here? My Pretty Pony. You had Josh Boone was trying to do that a few years ago. You had this is okay. That one I'll skip over. There was an announcement in 19 that they were doing The Regulators as a film. There was Rest Stop was going to be a movie, even though that by Legendary, which it's so weird with that one because that was one of the now defunct Dollar Babies program. I've seen so many short films of Rest Stop. The fact that they were going to try to stretch it into a full, I don't know. That was a little bit weird. Now, you also had the Muchettis around the same time. They said they were going to do Girl Who Loves Tom Gordon. They also said they were going to do Road Work. So that was another one which has kind of seemingly fallen by the wayside. Suffer the Little Children, which Sean Carter was going to be writing and producing. The 10 O'Clock People, which Fable Entertainment was working on years and years and years ago. Tommy Knockers, which I mentioned earlier. And I think it was 20 or 21. It was announced Gary Doberman was going to be directing that. And so, I mean, there were so many of these being announced, like every few weeks, few months, whatever. And yet the only ones that I think have a shred of possibility of still actually happening are ones like, for instance, Billy Summers. Right around the time that book was released, I was not the biggest fan of that book. I didn't dislike it. I was just a little more ho-hum on it. J.J. Abrams was supposed to be producing a television series of that. We haven't heard anything in over 2 years now, so I'm not necessarily thinking that that's happening. FX was trying to remake Carrie for like the fourth or fifth time if you include the musicals and stuff. But, I mean, Carrie's already been done. The original film, The Rage Carrie 2. You had the television series. You had the fourth incarnation of it, which was with Chloe Grace Moretz. That was the feature film from the same guy who, I want to say the same guy who directed Let Me In, which was another remake, of Let the Right One In. So that doesn't appear to be going anywhere. Christine, which Blumhouse and Brian Fuller were putting together. And I was checking up on this on Reddit just last night. And apparently about a year and a half after it was initially announced, King did not like the creative direction that they were going in. And so that project has presumably been scrapped. MGM was trying to remake The Dark Half a few years ago. Haven't heard a peep about that. I guess I've hit most of the biggies at this particular point as I'm just looking over this list. Revelations, they were trying to do the Revelations story with Revelations of Sarah, something Paulson, Sarah. I keep thinking Sarah Paulson. I know that's most definitely not it, but it was the tale that was adapted for either, was it The Outer Limits or was it, in any event, it was a short story that was eventually folded into Stephen King's The Tommyknockers, where, she thinks the Jesus little figurines are like talking to her and stuff and whatever. So they were talking about trying to, Rebecca Paulson, I want to say it was, the Revelations of Rebecca Paulson. And they're trying to turn that into a series on the CW. So that was another thing. Sleeping Beauties in 2019, we heard that Owen King himself was actually writing all the scripts and was going to direct this some episodes of this series. That never ended up happening. So really, and then Throttle, a few years ago, I think it was 2021, Throttle was announced, which was the collaboration between King and Joe Hill, which was in turn adapted into the Road Rage comic book. I mean, that was going to be made into an HBO Max original. So for pretty much all of these projects, it's been at least 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 to 5 years since we've heard anything about them, which leads me to believe that all of these are dead in the water. I think maybe the Rat story from If It Bleeds, I think Ben Stiller still has the rights to that, because when that book was originally coming out in 20, he immediately snatched up the rights. So I guess maybe that one has a little bit of a possibility. I'm trying to check it out here. Another one which people are thinking still might have a possibility is the Paul Greengrass directing Fairy Tale, which, Rubber Soul actually just gave a shout out to the fact that he finished it. That was another one that I was a little more ho-hum on. I wanted Tower Connections. They didn't end up happening. So, whatever. It is what it is. But Paul Greengrass was announced right around the time that book was published that he was going to direct an adaptation of it. I think at this point, anytime King puts out something new, it's somebody wants to immediately snatch up the rights to it so that if the book perhaps is a hit, they can develop it into something like they have it locked down and they have the ability. So I think a lot of the time you snatch something up, you get any sort of noteworthy name attached to it, whether they're from a producing standpoint or whether they're, like from a star or whatever, which is why I'm still skeptical a little bit about The Running Man, because Edgar Wright's been trying to make it for the longest time. The only reason I mentioned it in the seemingly like 95 percentile of happening is because Glenn Powell actually, when he was doing promotional stuff and interviews for Twisters, said it's the next thing that he's filming. The IMDb says it is scheduled to start shooting sometime this fall. But then again, we don't know a specific start date. We don't know where. So that's why it's a 95%, as opposed to the others. Some other dead projects, unfortunately, would be like the Blumhouse TV was developing a series for later, the Hard Case Crime. Right when that was published, they immediately announced they're doing a series. Lucy Liu is going to star in it. Nothing for years now. So we assume that is dead in the water. Another project that I was super stoked about was from a Buick 8. Thomas Jane was going to star. Director of Stakeland was going to be behind the camera. And yet at a recent thing that I was checking out on Reddit, apparently Thomas Jane in an interview said the rights lapsed. And so that's not happening either. So at this particular point, the only other adaptations that I think are pretty much for sure, I mean, we know the TV series of this is coming, right? I mean, HBO Max, I don't think they have actually dated it specifically as of yet, but they have an entire cast that's been announced. We know that it's taking place in the 60s, I want to say, to correspond, late 50s, early 60s, to correspond with the 27 years and everything from the 80s when they set this version, the 2017 version. So I thought they were initially going to be, Mike Hanlon's bits where, the little interludes where, looking back on the history of dairy and whatnot, they could still fold some of that stuff in, but, some of it, like the Egg Hunt had already been in the 2 feature films they did in 17 and 19 respectively. So I don't know. I can't say for sure, but the Welcome to Derry television series, I am very curious about, because first and foremost, HBO don't fuck around, man. With their television, their stuff is about as high profile, high quality. I mean, their old slogan when they first launched and it held for years, and I don't think they use it as often anymore, if at all, but it's not TV, it's HBO. Yeah, that's it still holds true, man, whether it's people's affinity for the House of the Dragon or this new Penguin series everybody says is badass. I mean, even their comedies like Entourage and Curb Your Enthusiasm are really funny. I mean, stuff like Oz and The Wire and The Sopranos are considered some of the greatest dramas of all time. And even back to beloved horror stuff like the EC Comics Tales from the Crypt series that they did. I mean, I don't know, man. HBO is, they're very consistent. And so for that reason, I have a lot of faith in the fact that the television prequel to Wacheti's 17 It is going to be top notch. He's directing a number of the episodes as well, which adds an additional wrinkle of excitement for me. So, yeah, I'm going to jump back to the chat real quick because I do see we had some other stuff coming through. Lou says Gordon Lightfoot's Sundown, very interesting choice. Okay. Okay, Jose says apparently King and Chismar next month is releasing a chapbook trapped in his miscellaneous works. Yeah, that's been so. They were actually giving that away with. So if you ordered through Cemetery Dance Chismar's new book, they would actually give you that little 48-page chapbook, and I was just like, I understand why Richard Chismar, being the guy behind Cemetery Dance, wants to kind of, I don't want to say use, or take advantage of, but he wants to kind of take advantage sounds bad. How do I go about this very, very lightly? I feel like he wants to use his affiliation with Stephen King to the benefit of promoting his own material. And that's why they've collaborated as much as they have. And they're obviously friends, and I'm not here to criticize anybody. But yeah, the fact that to get certain exclusive King goodies, you have to order some of his stuff a lot of the time. I have mixed feelings about things like that. So I don't know, man. So it is what it is. But yeah, you can already find this chapbook, I believe, floating around on like eBay and other resale sites and whatnot. So if they can give it an official release, because I've been curious about Trap since I first heard about it a few years ago. I know it was directed as a short film by Richard Chismar's son, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I don't know, man. If it's a King story that he had any sort of affiliation with, I guess he helped with like the story outline or something, but little 48-page chapbook. I don't know, to quote Wayne's World, it will be mine. Oh yes, it will be mine. It says, I do videos for any new King thing that comes out. I mean, he does have in the Cemetery Dance magazine a new short story. I pre-ordered it earlier this year, whenever the heck that comes out. I will certainly be doing a review of that, just like we will be doing a review over on the horror show of Salem's Lot when it comes out, and in all likelihood, The Monkey when it comes out. So when I finish school here next year, that's the one thing Cecil and I haven't decided if I'm going to bring Hale back over there, or if it's going to stay here, or if it's just going to completely relaunch as a podcast, or who the hell knows, man. I do like the visual component, though, of this particular story and this particular program. And I know that I know a lot of podcasters, they have both a video and an audio version of pretty much all the stuff that they do. So once time frees up a little bit after I get my BA in the film and media studies, we shall see. So anyway, okay, jumping back to what I'm saying here. Remember Monkey Shines. Okay. Yeah. Okay, horror film. I definitely agree with that. It's not amazing, but it was all right. It's all right. Okay, so cool. Thanks, Winnipeg. Just seeing that kind of the back and forth. Mr. King has been tweeting about the yep. I'm going to get to that. Faux show. Okay. What are your thoughts on the new Salem's Lot show? Says Bunta666. Well, I was just talking about it a little while ago, Bunta, so I don't know if I had already addressed this, but first and foremost, just to clarify, it's a movie, it's not a show. I would have preferred a show. I think the reason the two previous adaptations were miniseries was strictly because of the fact that it's a pretty big book, and there are so many intricacies amongst the townspeople as far as now, if you want to trim away all of that drama and keep it very centrally focused on Ben Mears, his little love interest, reconnecting with his old professor, hooking up with Father Callahan. If you want, Mark and everything, if you want to keep it very streamlined and not have all of those other stories, about what's going on in the lot, yeah, I guess you could probably condense it down to like around a 2-hour movie, and you wouldn't need to have that lengthier runtime. I love that sort of stuff though when it's done well. When it's done, I mean, I don't think it's done as well in a story like Under the Dome or like a Sleeping Beauties, but yet when King does the big town really well in something like Needful Things, in something like Salem's Lot, this is where I think that just kind of, it's a sad sacrifice for those characters to have to, just be kind of, trimmed out of the proceedings because you're trying to streamline it and keep it all. I'm very curious if they're going to really push this R rating and make it nice and violent and stuff, because that was one thing about both of the previous incarnations, except for the Larry Cohen, the Return to Salem's Lot. The other two being television, they were a little bit defanged and declawed. Okay. What else? No more Josh Boone King adaptations. Thank you for his version of The Stand. Yeah, Lou, I 100% agree with you. And that's why I'm so glad we didn't get Josh Boone's revival. That's why I am, and Mike Flanagan even says to this day, that is the one that he will forever mourn, is the fact that he did not get to actually do that. And it just broke his heart, just like it broke my heart, man, but he did, the last time he was discussing it, he did say, never say never. Who knows? Maybe I could, as his career continues gaining prominence. I mean, we shall see. In any event, the two other things that I would say, as far as adaptations go, we know for sure that this is happening. This is another one where they are announcing a cast. You have Mary Louise. She was on Weeds. She was actually previously paired on a Stephen King adaptation with Jack Bender for Mr. Mercedes, which I thought was great. And that is actually the guy who was behind the adaptation of The Institute, which everybody, myself included, well, not everybody, but large predominance of us were like, okay, Stranger Things was obviously influenced by Stephen King. And so The Institute is Stephen King trying to outdo somebody imitating Stephen King. It was like King trying to outdo a program that was influenced by his earlier work, things like Firestarter and whatever. So I don't know. I did not love The Institute, but it had some interesting aspects to it. I was hoping that it was going to be about, these kids being trained to be breakers or something, but that didn't end up happening. So whatever. It is what it is. But this is one. So Jack Bender was the guy behind the exceptional Mr. Mercedes television series that starred, none other than, oh goodness, why is the Irishman's name eluding me? Gleason, man. Brendan Gleason was so good as that. And I never thought of Bill Hodges being Irish, but, it worked for the show. In some ways, I thought the show, maybe not with the Finders Keepers adaptation, although I did really like that third season of Mr. Mercedes, but I think the Finders Keepers book is exceptional and stands on its own compared to the other three in the trilogy. But I thought the first season was actually better than the first book. I did. And I thought Brendan Gleeson was actually, he brought a little bit more charm and vulnerability and, dare I say, like sweetness and humor to the role. He added more nuance to the character. And they also gave a little bit more nuance to Brady and his mom. And I mean, you guys haven't seen that Mr. Mercedes television series, I believe. Excuse me. It still streams on Peacock. You can obtain physical DVDs from Amazon, which is what I did. So I will own them forever, ever. But yeah, Jack Bender being behind this series gets me much more excited. All too often, it's like, okay, they're adapting this, just like with The Monkey earlier, for instance. I'm like, okay, they're doing The Monkey as a movie. All right, sure, okay. And then I hear Osgood Perkins is directing it, and I'm like, okay, they're doing The Monkey, So yeah, the Institute, it has some interesting faces associated with it. Mary Louise Parker, I believe her name is. It takes me a moment sometimes because, man, when you're putting all kinds of directors and all kinds of, film history in there, along with, I'm taking like Spanish and math because those are things I didn't have to for my previous college degree in audio production. And so switching to film and media studies and liberal arts, I needed some things I didn't before. And so Jaime and Fuego trying to learn Spanish because I knew a little bit. I mean, I could kind of conversate a little bit, but we're talking actually getting into actual college Spanish, like, proper conjugation and, a myriad of vocabulary terminology that I was unaware of. And, just I knew about things like, masculine and feminine terms and, singular and plural. I mean, but yeah, essentially going back and taking my grammar and my English classes that I took in like high school and early college, and yet incorporating, those recollections into a completely different language. It's been, hey, I'm the one who had the moniker bestowed on me by some friends of mine here, some Spanish-speaking buddies of mine here in Phoenix, Arizona, and Southwest. And so I hung with the term, and it's time to pay the piper now. But it's almost like a Kelly Bundy thing lately, I feel like, where I'm trying to cram so much new information into my head that there's times now where I feel like when I put something new in, the name of a director or an actor or a certain factoid about something, like it's like pushed out, like the episode where Kelly Bundy forgets that her dad had 5 touchdowns in a single game when she's on the game competition show. She learns something new right before they start, and like boop, pushes it out. So we know the Institute is happening. We know the awesome showrunner Jack Bender is behind it. I believe it is going to be on MGM Plus, which is a streaming service practically nobody has, unfortunately. But there are some bangers on there. I believe the series Them, which a lot of people compare to Stephen King works, say that it is greatly influenced by some of his things. I've given some high praise for them. I've been wanting to watch it for a long, long time. Once again, trying to find the time, man. But that is another pretty much set in stone one, just like The Running Man, where we don't have a start date yet, but we have cast, we have directors, showrunners, everything seems to be in place for this to actually be transpiring. And then the last one I will be super brief about, the Talisman. And so the Talisman is being developed, and we heard about this a few years ago, but we heard an update late last year from the Duffer Brothers that, yes, this is still happening. We're just trying to finish this last season of Stranger Things, and for God's sake, they've been working on it periodically for years. I mean, these kids are pretty much adults now at this point. I think all of them are over the age of 18 at this particular point, if not like maybe 19 or 20 or shit, man. All those kids might be in their 20s by this particular point, their early 20s by the time this all airs. So I think the Duffers, especially with the Netflix name attached to it, I think this series, with Jack Sawyer, I think it will happen. And also the fact that King even mentioned recently in the last couple of months that he was going through a bunch of his old notes with the dearly departed Peter Straub. And he was looking over all of the ideas and the correspondence that the two of them had for that third and final book. Because until his passing, they had a lot of ideas bounce back and forth, and a lot of different, from what I understand at least, basically a map for how they wanted to close out that trilogy for this character. And I think it would bring a lot of joy to a lot of not just Tower Junkies with where they pivoted, most notably with Black House, the second book. But yeah, I mean, it seems like, especially with Amblin Entertainment producing, like that's a television series that feels to me like a no-brainer. And yet the fact that they have tried that this is one that they have been trying to make since it was originally released in the 80s. You have had, I think they were trying to do it as a movie. They tried to do it as a series, but I think the Duffers have those right sensibilities, very similar to where I have to admit the Francis Lawrence guy from Hunger Games, he makes sense for The Long Walk because of his track record, because of the types of properties he's succeeded with. And so I think the Duffers are a great choice for something like the Talisman. And even though we don't have a shoot start date, we have no cast, the fact that we got an update within the last year, the fact that we know they're tied up with this big penultimate swan song of the biggest thing that they have ever been involved with, let them get through that. But I think we'll see the Talisman, but probably not till, I would say, late 26, if not early 27. I know that's a long ass time away, but yeah, I think that's just it's just what we have to contend with, y'all. So that is all of the adaptations, except for one. And those in the know exactly what I'm referring to. Sorry, I've got my water back here in my thirsty buster. My coffee's all been done away with. But so the big thing right now that's going on is Life of Chuck. Now, The Life of Chuck was my favorite of the 4 novellas, which were housed in this collection, If It Bleeds, which came out in 2020. And I will never forget, and shout out to a friend of myself and my partner, it's Renee Hubbard, So she's been a longtime member of the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, which doesn't get as much attention, honestly, as I would love to. With all of the school stuff going on, it's just been like social media in general has been exceedingly difficult over the last year and a half. But I remember her essentially vocalizing and voicing the same feelings that I was having during the pandemic when I was reading the beginning of Life of Chuck, the first part of it. And it was like bone chilling, end of the world, like just some of the scariest shit. So unnerving, such anxiety riddled. I absolutely loved it. And the one thing that they are apparently revealing in the promotional materials for this is that it is a story told in reverse. Now, knowing Mike Flanagan, who has written the adaptation for this and directed it, I imagine he's going to be playing with time a little bit more so than just the backwards linear aspect that King did with the story. But the cast is so exceptional. You've got Tom Hiddleston in the main role. You've got Karen Gillan. You've got Mark Hamill is in this. I mean, obviously, I love Flanagan's wife. She's in this too. I mean, there is such an incredible bevy of talents in this. And it's one of the most heartfelt and sad and just uplifting. I mean, it's all over the place, this particular story. And for that reason, I can immediately understand why Mike Flanagan wanted, sorry, man, the itch on the nose is just killing me. But I can totally understand why Mike Flanagan would want to adapt this, because just based on the feels that this actually brings, it's so within his wheelhouse, guys, like so completely within it, in my estimation, that I am over the moon excited to see, because anything Mike Flanagan does, I just am over the moon for already and super excited about. I still think Midnight Mass is the best Stephen King thing that he ever did, even though it wasn't written by Stephen King. Those who've seen that amazing series definitely know what the hell I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, he was stellar with his adaptation of Dr. Sleep, great with Gerald's Game. I mean, yeah, he is. I still don't think he has made a bad film. I mean, the closest might be the Before I Wake, and that wasn't bad. It was just, kind of okay in my estimation. I feel like it, how do I say it? I feel like it was the weakest of his movies, and yet the weakest of Mike Flanagan movies is still probably going to be leaps and bounds above so much other genre fare that anybody could find out there, because he is so great at crafting character, and he has a genuineness about his work that I feel like is going to just be so properly reflective of the source material. And we don't have a release date for it yet. Hell, we don't even have a distributor for it yet. He actually made this outside of the studio system. He was able to get some exceptions to continue filming during the pandemic because of the fact that his project was not affiliated with SAG. It wasn't affiliated with any of that stuff. And so, with any of the strike was against that, those producers. And so since he was not a part of that guild of producers or whatever, he was doing his own completely independent thing, no studio attachment. That's how those exceptions and those waivers were able to actually happen. And the big thing is that Life of Chuck just premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and it proceeded to win the Audience Award. And so the big thing about the Audience Award, and I know lots of different trade outlets have said it, but I have to call attention where it's due, in the fact that a lot of these Audience Award winners have gone on to be like Best Picture at the Oscars contenders, and in some cases, like a film like Nomadland, with Frances McDormand, or even I know it's a little bit of a controversial film in some people's eyes, but Green Book, which won Mahershala Ali an Academy Award. Like, these are films that when they have won the Audience Award at TIFF, they have gone on to major awards contention once that season properly starts here in about a month and a half or so, when all the big heavy hitting awards winners. So I'm hopeful that we will see this picked up and distributed sometime around the holidays. That is what my gut is telling me. It's what the intuition is hoping. But man, if you guys haven't gone on to Mike Flanagan's socials and seen his practically fighting back tears, he's just so happy and so elated when he woke up and found out the morning after, they showed the festival was wrapping up and everything and whatever, that he had won this award. And he had just so many voicemails and messages from people. And he's like, what the hell's going on? And yeah, he was just so overjoyed. And you could just tell how proud he was and how humbled he was. Just everything that Mike Flanagan kind of stands for as a creator, which I really, really appreciate. Him and his wife, Katie Siegel, I want to say, they're just what a pair, those two. They're pretty awesome. And just seeing the fact that King was out at the premiere in TIFF, he never thought that Life of Chuck could even be made into a movie. He's like, when Flanagan apparently optioned this with him, he's like, "How are you going to make that into a movie?" You know, he wasn't really feeling it. He didn't think it was possible. But then again, how do you make a sequel to Kubrick's Shining that is also, faithful to a novel that, did not stay, within the continuity of what Kubrick changed and whatever? It's a very special skill somebody like Mike Flanagan has to kind of straddle that line, and I mean, juggling of tones and making things scary and sentimental, and you get a little bit of all of that, especially with what happens in the third act with some stuff in the attic, without getting into the Life of Chuck. But I love the Life of Chuck. I think that maybe this could be the kind of just jolt that King needs, because when the King Assance was going down, it really was revved up significantly because of one of his horror films, that being Muschetti's It. It would be nice to see King get back to some dramatic notoriety, stuff along the lines of, Stand By Me, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, stories like that, were critically acclaimed, and they really just made people be like, that's a Stephen King story. Now there's scariness in this story in the Life of Chuck, obviously, but I don't know, man. It was in my most anticipated of the year, despite the fact that we don't even have a release date for it. When Cecil and I did our preview on the horror show of our most anticipated of the year, I think this was like right around my top 3, maybe top 2. I don't remember the exact spot, but man, if you have not read The Life of Chuck, it is housed within this tome. If It Bleeds, yep, our rat cat on the front there. Yeah. So in any event, that brings us to the last thing, at least as far as adaptation stuff goes. And I think I've been going for almost an hour and a half now. So my heart out was around 11 p.m. Eastern time, King time, because I started this at 9:19 King time. And I gave myself right up until around 8 because I'm heading out to a movie tonight. It's my birthday weekend. And so my birthday is the day before Sai King. So it was yesterday. And so it's always a few days of celebrating, because the 19th is the day before mine. And that's always a big day for Tower junkies like myself. And then, my birthday and then King's birthday. And I know so many September birthdays, y'all. I mean, both of my little brothers, Cecil is born in September. My guitarist, Mahalo, he's born in September. My sister-in-law, my first guitar player in my first band, he was actually born on the 19th. I mean, there's a lot of us out there. Virgos unite, everybody. So, but the last adaptation, and this would probably in some circles, they're like, hey, Fuego, you should probably have listed that off like somewhere around the Talisman, because of the fact that, you've got a prominent name associated, but, there's no casting, there's no shoot date, start date, blah, 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 whatever. But the reason I have hope in this, much more so than ever before, look at this sucker. Bammer. Says, should probably, I'm always like scared to take this off of the shelf because it's worth money, and it's a pretty pristine copy of it too. Thank you to Lady Catherine for getting me this a number of years ago. But The Dark Tower. For all Tower junkies out there, I feel your pain, very much so, about that 2017 movie. We're still mourning it. Idris Elba's an exceptional actor, just not the right casting, and less even that, because I know everybody's probably automatically going to play the color card, which isn't really what it's about. For that was the fact that King was even championing it from a storytelling standpoint as being the last time around. He tweets about the Horn of Eld, all these different things, which Roland is supposed to, just blast at the top of that damn thing. And then, much to my dismay, they attempted a number of years ago with, I believe, Glenn Mazzara is the name of the guy who was behind The Walking Dead for some of their most prominent, highest rated seasons as far as viewership goes. He did a pilot which had kind of a young Roland slant. So it was going to combine the stuff with young Roland from Wizard and Glass along with the stuff with young Roland in the original Gunslinger book. I thought that was an exceptional idea. Worked through the timeline just like they did with up there, the comic books, which are excellent. But they did a pilot. Amazon opted not to pick it up. There are a few people within the King camp of connectivity that have seen this. I believe the Losers Club podcast. It was either them or the King Cast, one of the two, who have, definitely more than filled the void that I was trying to, since when I stepped away, I saw, when I stepped away from Hale about a year and a half ago, I saw the rise that, those two podcasts in particular were going on with some of the celebrity guests and with, just getting King himself. I was stoked for him, man. Those are some of my pipe dreams still too. And who knows if things like that could happen with the proper relaunch of this program or not. But affinities and, healthy competitions aside and things of that nature, hey, the Beatles had the Stones and, King Cast has the Losers Club. And, I'm just a Tower junkie and constant reader who loves talking about King, regardless of the viewership and everything else. But I've listened to both and they're both great coverage of El Rey. But so Flanagan, same Flanagan behind, the aforementioned Life of Chuck. He has been trying his damnedest to get this Dark Tower project off the ground. There is a possibility, apparently, that it could end up on Amazon because that's who he has his first look deal with going forward since leaving Netflix. His last project being the Fall of the House of Usher, which I wasn't I wasn't over the moon for House of Usher. I thought it was decent. The first couple episodes I thought were bangering, dude, especially the one with the rave in that house. I thought that was awesome. The rest of it, while the dialogue was good, the performances were good. Some of the retrofitting of the post stories I wasn't as into, but I don't know. Compared to Hill House and Midnight Mass, it just felt not quite as inspired or as interesting for me. But yeah, you can't win them all. Nobody has a perfect game or career or whatever. I'm not going to say it's like a bad day at the office with Fall of the House of Usher. That would probably be more so like the haunting of the second one that they did, Blythe Manor, which I thought was okay, but maybe one of the weakest things that I think Flanagan. Now, Flanagan only directed a few episodes, and so that was like a little bit of a lesser thing there. But so he has been trying to get this Dark Tower series, and then he's almost taken the Ron Howard approach where he's saying there's going to be both television stuff and movies. I personally don't necessarily think that's the wisest idea. Maybe you should keep it just like what HBO Max is doing with this new Harry Potter series where they're going to do one season, one book. Now, what I would personally do is probably one season, first season would be young Roland, kind of like what they were trying to do. And then, from there you can do maybe, I would say, the older version of Roland from the Gunslinger, combine that with the drawing of the three. But then again, you've also got aspects of the Wasteland. That's the thing. The time jump is where you would have to make a very, concerted decision as to, do I want to keep it in chronological order or do I want to bounce around and have, because you could, technically until like the stretch run from 5 onward, you could probably have Roland flashback stuff that you sprinkled throughout the first few seasons and the first few books if you were to do, one book per one season. But in any event, the reason all of the fervor is starting to increase is because I believe Club Stephen King, it was either Club Stephen King or maybe it was Legends Library. Anyway, there were some questions by, I believe it was Dread Central, that were asked of Stephen King and Flanagan correspondently at the world premiere of Life of Chuck. And they're like, hey, Steve, see, you've been tweeting a lot of Dark Tower stuff lately, man. And he was like, I'm getting revved up, and you have to probably think, the reason Robin Firth has the gig is because, when you're 77 years old and when you've written these books over the course of decades and decades and decades, there's probably a lot of nuance that has kind of, almost done the Kelly Bundy, like I was talking about. I think there's a high probability of that being a thing, and so he's posting great art of like Shardik and, a great bit from the comic book where Roland is seeing like almost like a spirit of Susan Delgado. And so, I feel like he is going back through, he's getting reacquainted. And the reason a lot of people are speculating he's doing this is because he is going to be working in tandem with Mike Flanagan on this television series of The Dark Tower. That's the thing. Flanagan was coy at tip as well, but he was like, yes, but that's another thing. Just like with the Duffers, you have to figure scheduling because Mike's project after this is presumably his Exorcist movie. So it's like, okay, well, after the Life of Chuck cycle, he's going to make The Exorcist, and then hopefully, maybe fingers firmly crossed, Dark Tower stuff. I mean, I would be really sad if it turned into a Blythe Manor sort of situation where Flanagan isn't like the thing that made Hill House and Midnight Mass so exceptional was the fact that he wrote and directed every single episode of those series, whereas he was working with, and same with Fall of House of Usher, the Usher show. He was working in tandem with a writer's room, directed some episodes, but not all of them. That's what I'm a little leery of with regards to the Dark Tower. I know Flanagan is a Tower junkie himself, and so because of that affinity, maybe he would not want to relinquish those duties. It's like, this is my baby, I'm going to keep it close and whatever else. So I don't know, but there's a lot of speculation going on right now, and rightfully so, that King is tweeting or X-posting or whatever the hell people want to call it now. He has been putting a lot of imagery from the towers on socials, and he is even, like, in his accompanying phrasing, he's been saying, thinking a lot about the tower, thinking about Midworld, all these different things. And so there's a reason why, even if they're not going to tell us why. Tell me why. He's there is very definitive purpose. I don't think King is just going to randomly, when that Flanagan is trying to ramp up this series and find a home for it, and has been talking about casting has been happening behind the scenes, but during the actors' strike they couldn't really do anything official or like major correspondence. Like, that's the thing, everybody. There are a lot of high-profile projects, whether they were in the can or whether in pre-production or whatever, that were significantly set back because of that whole fiasco with the writers and the actors and the producers and all that different stuff. Like, it messed some stuff up, and it definitely pushed a lot of timelines back for projects that many of us were just beyond stoked about. So nothing definitive going forward about the tower. I really did like what Mike Flanagan said at TIFF, though, during that interview that I saw. The video was floating around him. He's like, well, anyone who has been on the path of the beam like I am knows that it is a very, very, very long journey. And so for that reason, he's like, hey, I know I'm eventually going to get there, but it's just, it's taken a while. And, that's the thing. You have to maintain the dedication and all of that stuff. So I don't know. That is the only other one very similar to the Duffers project for the Talisman, where it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's happening, but based on the history of the Dark Tower, though, if I was going to say which do I think, if one of the two was going to happen and one of the two was not going to happen, I would say that I think it would probably be the Dark Tower not happening, because these rights do lapse. They do. And that's how Flanagan was actually able to get a hold of them to begin with. And so unless he starts getting something because of these windows of time, or a few years typically, right? And so I would imagine if he doesn't get something going soon, in some capacity, he will in fact lose those rights. And I think with the Duffers and Netflix associated, and with the fact that it's a property that's not been adapted, and the Dark Tower adaptation has such a big negative stigma about it. And the fact that the other pilot was scrapped, the fact that Flanagan's first look is with Amazon. Dare I say, I do still feel like there's a lot working against this Dark Tower project. But damn, do I hope it happens, guys, because that would just would make me so incredibly happy. And that, everybody, is kind of the rounding out of the proceedings as I'm getting closer to 8 o'clock here. 8 o'clock Arizona time, which is we're the same as PST right now. But one other thing that I wanted to make mention of, because I've seen a lot of renewed attention for it. So this is a terrific book called Hearts in Suspension. And so it says Stephen King, but he really only has just one major essay of his university reflections at his time at University of Maine at Orono, I want to say it was. And so, it was the late 60s, early 70s? I believe it was the late 60s when he was there. Because he was born in 47. Yes, it would have been the late 60s for sure. And man, there's a great essay from him, which is it's very lengthy. It's very Um, it's very heartfelt. It's very bittersweet, as you would probably imagine, because he's reflecting on a time when he met his wife, but he's also reflecting on friends, both that he kept up with and some that he lost touch with. And yet the thing that really makes this especially great is the fact that you also have a bunch of essays from different classmates and confidants, people that King was involved with in the writing scene and the poetry scene. And hearing other people's recollections of King before he ascended to the throne, so to speak, are really fascinating. You've got old reprints of some of his garbage truck stuff, which is really cool. And yeah, you can see how, just complete reprints of the stuff, which is cool. So yeah, you can see how King was writing and some of the snide sarcasm. There's also a lot of cool photos from the era. So because, this was during the counterculture movement. This was, during protests about, King was one of those guys who came up at that time in American history when so much prolific change was happening. So I believe this is getting renewed interest because of the fact that the University of Maine Press has it back in print now or something. Because I've had this book for a number of years, and I did a video for a Hail to Stephen King called Steve to the King, the College Years. That's my little nod to Saved by the Bell, the college years. Lame, Fuego, lame. But yeah, so it was called Steve to the King, the College Years. And it was a video where I talked about this book. I also just talked about some of the other musings that King has done over the years, not just in that book, but just about his time in college in general. During that video, I talked about just the political and the social climate of the United States and how impactful it obviously was on Stephen King's creative process as well. So if you guys have not checked out Hearts in Suspension, King actually implores people not to get it on Amazon. He implores you to purchase it directly from the University of Maine Press. I believe as of this live stream, it is still available there, I would hope. But yeah, guys, that is, at least since we don't have a set release date for this new Holly story, we don't have a set release date for that short story that's going to be popping up in that Cemetery Dance issue. Yeah, I focused the predominance of this 77th birthday, King's starting of his 77th turn of the wheel, so to speak. The reason I focus so much on adaptations is because I feel like we are getting, as far as confirmations go, things that are either 100% transpiring or are finally happening, like finally getting to see Salem's Lot, or things that are like in the 90 to 95%, like we're pretty sure they're happening, like the Edgar Wright stuff and whatnot, and the maybes that are still out there. I mean, shit, dude, the Institute TV series, I remember that was announced right when the book came out, and we didn't hear anything about it for years. I thought it was going to be a dead in the water situation, just like Sleeping Beauties, just like what a lot of people, myself included, assume is happening with like the Billy Summers series or the later series. Some of these books that he put out in the last 5 to 7 years that immediately were announced as having adaptations, and then I'm assuming nothing got off the ground or right slaps like Thomas Jane said happened with From a Buick 8 or whatever. But yeah, Welcome to Derry, that being the big high-profile television thing, that is for sure happening. We know The Long Walk is filming. We know The Life of Chuck is going to definitely, with just getting that prestigious award at TIFF, it is going to be in theaters, I would say, in the next 4 to 6 months probably, because they may wait and just put it out early next year because the award season does go through January a lot of the time, because as long as it has limited release in a couple theaters, like New York and LA, it is viable for awards contention. But it seems to me like the kind of thing that is going to get snatched up based on that distinction and winning that sort of award. And I think they're going to put it out. My money is on sometime in the month of December or January. We are going to be seeing The Life of Chuck. So stoked about that. October 3rd, we've got Salem's Lot. Who the hell knows if it's going to be good or garbage? I'm hopeful, but not holding my breath, everybody. And as I'm wrapping things up, I'm just going to take one other look here. I mean, being a last minute sort of thing, going to okay, yeah, just speculation about Hiddleston would be a great Roland. That is an interesting poll. Curiouser and curiouser. If I'm going to quote Alice there, that is oh boy, I need to, you see, once we get like some official word that this is happening, because it's still, all we know is, keep in mind, everybody, all we know is he has the rights. That's all we know. He has the rights and he's developing it. And he's adamantly developing it. He's met with actors, or at least corresponded, but doesn't have a network. I'm assuming he doesn't have funding or anything for it just yet. He's still trying to find that. There's the tumultuous history of attempting to adapt it, with Ron Howard trying for a while. And, the terrible film that we got in 2017, the aborted pilot. I don't know. The comic books are so good, guys. If you're really looking for a full-on visual adaptation beyond those novels, the comics that Marvel did are great. They really, really are. I wish they'd been able to continue beyond drawing of the three because, there was so much awesomeness that I wanted to see from the Wastelands and Wizard and Glass and Wolves for the most of it. 6 and 7, 6 especially, I have my major issues with, but I'm not here to gripe about those today. I am here to extend a grande gracias to, first and foremost, Steve. We love you, buddy. All of us Tower Junkies, constant readers, viewers alike. You've definitely enriched my life significantly. And at this point, since I feel like the output is kind of taking a little bit of a step back when you see less coming from him, because during the King of Sons, we had a couple years there where there were 2 things released in a year. King's done that a number of times. The fact that we don't have a specific date for his next book and his previous book has been out for a number of months at this particular point. Who knows? But King is getting up there in years, but definitely showing no signs of slowing in my estimation. And I guess that just means I need to get back on some rereads, everybody. And I'm very excited about that. It's long overdue for another journey to the tower. So, maybe it is time for that. So as I am just about to 8 o'clock, everybody, I am going to extend a grande gracias for most notably to, to Jose Storms and Lou and Rob Rubber Soul. Everybody who, whether it's names that I had seen before or those that I had not. I see Cece in here. I see, Bunta 666. He was asking about Salem's Lot. I am so very thankful for those who actually took the tune to join into this impromptu discussion from yours truly. It's been a number of months since I've done one of these, and I'm hoping during fall break, that I can do at least another video or two, something pre-recorded. Probably won't be live, but I've definitely missed Talking King. It's just been, it's been movies and it's been television and not of that. I've tried to incorporate the King where I can. I actually, I did a revisit of the Outsider television series for a crime and violence in American cinema class that I took at Arizona State. And so getting back into the thick of that television series and remembering its strengths and its many weaknesses as well. One of which was not Ben Mendelsohn. Ben Mendelsohn is exceptional in that show. It's very well directed. The little bit we get from Bateman, he's really good. So, but yeah, that's a series that I actually found myself, even over time, not liking the Outsider story as much, even the novel, because it's got a lot of slowdown in the middle. And the series really changed up our version of Holly. And I love that girl from Bad Times at the El Royale. She's a British singer, but she was a little less eccentric. It was a different turn of the wheel and everything. But so, yeah, even long story short, even with my studies at Arizona State in film and media, I try to incorporate King whenever I can, But I guess that's going to be the end of the proceedings, everybody. Feliz cumpleaños, Stephen King. And also for those who get to check this out in the aftermath, if you're watching the live version of this after, say thank you for that as well. And leave a comment, do the like thing. I've been primarily over the last X number of months just doing these little YouTube shorts of when I see a movie in theaters. I'll talk about it for a minute because that's really been the only thing that I have had time for, as opposed to like lengthy edits and, things of that nature. Because I just, to quote some, Stray Light Run, I don't have the time. I wish I did. So in any event, everybody, I extend a grande gracias, say thank you. And I say thank you for the palaver that we have shared today. I hope that we get to share more of it sooner rather than later. And yes, until next time, remember to stay scared, as we always say on the horror show. Even though you're here on Enfuegotainment, I just have to go through the routine and read Stephen King I guess the big recommend here for me, probably going to be, I mean, it's always the Dark Tower, man. But, Life of Chuck, since that seems to be the new Stephen King story of the moment, it sits in this book. If it bleeds, The Life of Chuck. Bring it, Hitty, baby. Bring it, Hiddleston. All right. Everybody, thanks so very much for stopping in. And any who gave Sai King or myself a little bit of birthday love, it's much appreciated.